Mr.TeenScreams. It was a foggy Friday night when Mark, a 27-year-old college student, started his first graveyard shift at Mobile 66. The gas station was located in a remote area at the edge of the town. The station was infamous for its eerie atmosphere and whispered rumors of paranormal activity. But Mark, desperate for some extra cash, couldn't afford to let those rumors deter him. As he arrived at Mobile 66, he noticed the thick fog surrounding the gas station. The dimly lit store cast eerie shadows on the empty fuel pumps. He shivered, not from the cold, but from the unsettling aura that seemed to envelop the place. Mark's shift began uneventfully. He took over from the evening shift employee who couldn't wait to leave the premises. A few customers came and went, but by midnight, the flow of patrons had slowed to a trickle, with only the soft hum of the refrigerators for company. Mark decided to pass the time by browsing the internet on his phone. As the hours went by, he started to feel more comfortable in his new surroundings. That is until 2 a.m., when he heard a faint tapping on the glass door. Peering into the fog, Mark saw a frail old woman standing outside. Her eyes were hollow, and her skin hung loosely from her skeletal frame. He opened the door, feeling a sudden chill in the air. The woman mumbled something incoherent before shuffling past him and into the store. She wandered the aisles, never quite stopping to pick anything up. Mark's skin crawled as he watched her, but he couldn't pinpoint why. The woman eventually stopped in front of the register, revealing a tattered newspaper article in her gnarled hand. She pointed at the headline, and Mark squinted to read it. Fatal accident at Mobile 66 claims 2 lives. The woman's voice croaked like a rusty hinge as she whispered, "They're still here." Before Mark could respond, the woman hobbled out of the store, disappearing into the fog. He stared at the door for a moment, a chill running down his spine. The mention of the accident triggered a memory. He had heard about a fatal crash at the gas station several years ago. A young couple had perished that night, and locals swore their spirits still lingered. Mark tried to shake off the unsettling encounter, telling himself it was the product of an overactive imagination. But as the night wore on, strange occurrences began to plague him. The lights in the store flickered, and the once stable radio emitted bursts of static. Shadows seemed to dance along the walls, twisting and contorting in ways that defied logic. Mark felt an unseen presence, like someone breathing down his neck. He tried to call his manager, but his phone refused to connect. As fear threatened to consume him, he heard the sound of a car approaching. Grateful for the distraction, he rushed outside to greet the customer. To his horror, Mark saw a mangled vehicle, its metal twisted and scorched. The headlights were shattered, and the windshield cracked in a spiderweb pattern. It was the same car from the accident years ago. The driver's door cracked open, and the ghostly figures of the young couple emerged, their expressions a mixture of anguish and rage. The apparitions approached Mark, their hollow eyes staring into his soul. He felt the cold, clammy grip of terror as they closed in on him. Just when he thought they would drag him to the afterlife, the morning sun broke through the fog. The spirits vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. Mark, drenched in sweat, stumbled back into the gas station. His manager arrived shortly after, surprised to find Mark huddled on the floor, his face pale and eyes wide. "What happened to you?" his manager asked, concern etched on his face. Mark hesitated, wondering if he should share the harrowing events that had transpired. He decided to tell his manager everything. The old woman, the flickering lights, the shadows, and the ghostly couple. His manager listened intently, and as Mark finished his tale, the older man let out a deep sigh. "I've heard rumors about this place for years, but I've never experienced anything like that myself. I'm sorry I didn't warn you, but I thought they were just stories." Mark nodded, still shaken by the night's events. "I can't work here anymore. I'm sorry." His manager understood and helped Mark find a new job at another gas station, far away from the haunted Mobile 66. As time passed, Mark tried to put that night behind him, but the memories never faded. He would occasionally hear whispers around town about the haunted gas station, and each time he couldn't help but shudder, remembering the chilling experience he had endured. Though he never set foot near Mobile 66 again, he knew the spirits of the tragic couple were still there, forever trapped between worlds, seeking a peace they may never find. Under the veil of a moonless night, the wind howled through the barren landscape surrounding the old gas station. Located on a desolate stretch of highway, miles away from civilization, the station had a fitting name: Lonely Man's Road. The aging structure seemed to cling to life, the peeling paint on the walls, a testament to years of neglect. Its flickering neon sign cast eerie shadows across the deserted lot, creating an atmosphere of foreboding. The station's lone attendant, Jake, was used to the isolation. With nothing but a small shack to call home, he spent his nights reading old paperbacks and listening to the distant wail of coyotes. Although he was a man of few words, Jake took solace in the quietude of his surroundings. One evening, as Jake was counting the day's earnings and preparing to close up, a car pulled into the gas station. It was a black sedan, its windows tinted, and the engine purring quietly. Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as the vehicle came to a stop. The driver stepped out, his face obscured by the darkness. As he approached, Jake noticed the man's tall, gaunt figure, and the way his eyes seemed to gleam unnaturally in the faint light. He wore a black suit and a fedora, giving him the appearance of a character from a noir film. "Greetings," the man said, his voice smooth and unsettling. "I need to fill up, and I'm looking for a place to stay. Is there a motel nearby?" Jake hesitated, then shook his head. "Nothing for miles, I'm afraid. Just me and this old gas station." The stranger's eyes narrowed, and he seemed to study Jake for a moment before nodding. "Very well, fill it up then." As Jake began to pump the gas, the stranger wandered into the small convenience store. Curiosity piqued. Jake watched through the store window as the stranger pursued the dusty shelves. He noticed the man linger near the back of the store, and then quickly pocket an old-fashioned key that hung on a rusted hook. When the stranger returned to the counter, Jake pretended not to have seen anything. "That'll be $50, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. The stranger handed over the money, his cold gaze never leaving Jake's face. "Thank you," he murmured, before returning to his car and driving off into the darkness. Confused and unsettled, Jake examined the spot where the key had been. It belonged to the small storage room behind the shack, a place he hadn't entered in years. He knew it contained nothing of value, just old equipment and long-forgotten trinkets. But something about the stranger's interest in the keys sent a shiver down his spine. For several nights, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He became increasingly paranoid, jumping at every creak and groan of the old gas station. He even began to carry a shotgun with him, feeling the weight of the weapon as a small comfort in the face of the unknown. 1 week later, the stranger returned. This time, he was accompanied by 2 other men, faces equally shrouded in shadow. They parked their car next to the storage room, and the driver handed Jake a crisp $100 bill. "We'll be needing your storage room," the stranger said, his voice chillingly calm, as the man began unloading a large crate from the trunk. Jake's instincts screamed at him to do something, anything to stop them, but fear kept him rooted to the spot. His shotgun trembling in his hands, the men carried the crate into the storage room and quickly returned to their car. "Leave the gas station for an hour," the stranger instructed, his eyes boring into Jake's. "When you come back, it'll be like we were never here." As the men drove off, Jake couldn't suppress his curiosity any longer. He knew that whatever was happening in the storage room was dangerous, but he had to find out the truth. He approached the door and cautiously inserted the spare key he kept hidden in his shack. The door creaked open, revealing the crate, now lying open on the floor. The room was filled with an eerie glow, emanating from a large, crystal-like object nestled within the crate. The pulsating light seemed to beckon him closer, casting strange shadows across the walls. Before Jake could react, the door slammed shut behind him, and he heard the sound of the lock clicking into place. Panic surged through him as he pounded on the door, but his cries went unanswered. The crystal's glow grew brighter, the air around it crackling with energy. Suddenly, a searing pain shot through Jake's skull, and his vision blurred. As his consciousness began to slip away, he felt a sinister presence enter his mind, as if the crystal was reaching out to him, trying to calm his very soul. When Jake finally awoke, he found himself lying on the cold floor of the storage room. The door stood open and the crate was gone, leaving behind only a scorched mark on the floor. He stumbled out into the gas station, his body weak and his mind reeling from the nightmarish encounter. Over the following days, Jake tried to piece together what had happened. He knew the crystal had been no ordinary object. It had held a power beyond his understandings, and the stranger and his accomplices had been part of something much darker and more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. But now they were gone, leaving behind only the haunting echoes of their sinister presence. And as Jake tried to return to his solitary life, He couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare of Lonely Man's Road was far from over.